Hello, this is Angelia, and you are listening to or watching the podcast, Why You Do What You Do, the podcast that talks about human development and psychology to maybe help you figure out a little bit more about why you do what you do. And we've been talking about the empirical approach to psychology, and we're going to pick back up on that. One alternative classification scheme, and when they say scheme, they don't mean like a schemer kind of thing, they mean like a way of doing things. So someone commented on that, and it's like, no, they don't mean a scheme. But that's a word that the lay person assumes that's what we're talking about. But that's in that means a way of doing things, a way of behaving. We develop schemas all the time for doing things. You can Google it and look into that more if you like. It involves using known causes of the behaviors. So they look at other folks, well, this, that, and the other person exhibited this behavior and they had this problem. So that's how, any science develops, is you start seeing patterns. And when you start seeing patterns, you can apply the pattern, see if it works, and sometimes that is the answer. We could, for instance, have categories resulting from various factors. Genetics, and some of these are genetic. Viral infections of the brain. Traumatic brain injuries, that is also a big cause. And so forth. Unfortunately, there are no explanations for most psychological conditions. Usually it is, as we talked about yesterday, a cumulative thing. You got depressed because something happened, like a death in the family. But then you got anxious about that because, you weren't sure where things were going now or what you were going to do now. And so that developed into that. That might develop into OCD habits to kind of feel in control of your environment. That might develop into agoraphobia because you're scared to go out. See, there's layers, don't want to sound like Shrek, there's layers like an onion, but there are. One size does not fit all, and one diagnosis is not generally, the thing that's going to be pinpointed. Sometimes this is a process that you're going to have to work on, and that's true most of the time, as we talked about yesterday. Woodruff and his colleagues further contend that once the etiology has been established, the disorder is no longer regarded as psychopathological. Because, if there's a medical cause, then you can treat the medical cause. And if it's a situational cause, then you can usually, adapt to the situation or, talk yourself out of these behaviors because of the situation. So sometimes, resolution is achievable. When vitamin deficiency was clearly identified as the cause of certain behavioral disturbances, these became routine medical disorders to be treated by physicians, not by mental health specialists. So, if you go to your medical doctor first and tell them what's going on, sometimes they can give you tests. And say, well, yeah, you got, maybe a thyroid problem might look like depression, and so they can do tests and rule out the physical. I got something on my little pants here. Rule out the physical, so that then if it's something that needs to be looked at mentally, they can. When it was discovered that general paresis, a certain form of behavioral deviance, was linked to syphilis, this too became an ordinary medical problem because syphilis can cause spirochetes in your brain that make you crazy. That's why you should practice safe sex. Some psychologists are convinced that some physical cause will eventually be discovered for all the psychopathological disorders. But as we noted earlier, we are still a long way from such a development. Like I said, no science is probably ever going to be complete because we're always finding out more. And like I said, I believe God invented science, and someday science might prove that God exists. So, Therefore, it is simply not possible to routinely use an approach based on causes, because they're not all the same for every person. At the same time, we do know or strongly suspect the etiology of some disorders, and this information is included in our current classification scheme. Again, experience, you build on experience, and that can lead you in a certain direction. Now, like I say, one size does not fit all, so if you're going in this direction and it doesn't seem to be working or fitting, then you need to look at another direction. For example, the behavioral symptoms of organic mental disorders, confusion, disorganization, memory loss, irritability, and diminished energy, are common to many forms of psychopathology. But in this category, the cause is physiological damage to the brain. So again, if you have a traumatic brain injury, that might be causing these things, and it might not be an actual mental illness. You might be having mental illness symptoms, but the problem is the brain injury. Of course, this fact must be verified either by clear-cut historical data, if the person was in an accident, for example, or by medical laboratory evidence from x-rays, brain scans, electroencephalograms, etc. Now, when they wanted to test one of my sons for ADHD, they did an EEG on him, had him hooked up. They said, oh yeah, look, check this out. His brain is, not firing right. There's, stuff going on here. So yeah, we're going to say he probably does have this. That was a backup of the doctor saying, hey, this sounds like this. And the school, of course, school has their own opinions on a child who's, precocious and, moves around a lot. They don't care for that. I wanted to be sure. I wanted to be 100% sure before there were any interventions taken that we knew this was what was going on. Once verified, the diagnosis of organic mental disorder can be made. Thus, the current classification scheme, while mainly based on overt symptoms, is not purely behavioral. A second alternative classification scheme involves a theoretical model of behavior, which contrasts sharply with the empirical approach of the behavioral classification system. So, again, with experience, if you have one client or patient that has this problem and they're exhibiting this way, then you have another one and another one, then it's going to lead you to look in that direction next time. So to start over from scratch and say, well, let's figure it out. We have no idea why they're behaving like this, but you had 20 other people behaving like this. So there's a good chance that there might be a similarity there. So, again, one size does not fit all, but you can always try it on and see. An example of such a model is Sigmund Freud's psychoanalytical theory. And of course, most everyone knows who Sigmund Freud is. If you don't, Google that one too. Freud postulated that all individuals mature by stages: the oral, anal, don't giggle, phallic, latency, and genital stages, again, don't giggle, of psychosexual development. However, maturation can be fixated or halted during any stage. In fact, the particular stage at which a person is fixated determines the particular mental disorders that develops as a consequence. And of course, now we know that can be included, but it's not the be-all, end-all situation there for most people. Certain stages like that do not play a part in their mental problems. This type of classification scheme has many demands, including an in-depth understanding of psychoanalytic theory. A listing of observable characteristics must be made to sort people reliably into the various maturational levels. Despite the widespread popularity of Freud's model, and despite its enormous impact on our present theories, the reality is that it has not achieved that level of diagnostic reliability. Because, like I said, of course, all the guys back in the day liked it because it was about sex. And, but the psychoanalytical theory is the important thing to take from Freud's work. Because he figured out, the talk therapy and figuring out what the problem is with this person is, a very valid way of helping people with mental illness. So, it was not the most reliable diagnostic, but it paved the way for ones that became. A third alternative to classification by overt behavior is to base the scheme on a standardized task or a psychological test. I used to grade those at the psychology group in the counseling center that I worked at. So I know all about those. I was tested on some things, because the work decided anybody who comes and works here needs to take a psych test to make sure that they don't have any problems. We had some problem patients there, I'll tell you that. But I think that had more to do with people's personality issues in the office than it actually did with any mental issues. But I digress. Such as the one proposed by McLemore and Benjamin, based on Leary's International Checklist. Other diagnostic models, such as those based on the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory, or the MMPI. Anybody in the psychology field knows the MMPI, and some of you people might know about that, And again, don't be afraid to get psych tested or anything like that, because, you're just going to learn some things, and it might be helpful to you. Have also been proposed. The score combinations on these tests are used to form individual psychological profiles, which are then grouped by similarity. Because, like I say, everyone is unique and different, but, like I say, if you have 20 other people that exhibited this, and the root cause was this, there's a chance that that's the case with this person as well. In fact, evidence from empirical studies has consistently confirmed that individuals with similar profiles exhibit similar psychopathological behavior. Nonetheless, this particular approach is not popular because only psychologists who have had extensive experience with these diagnostic models and the instruments on which they are based can use this approach. Like your cognitive behavioral therapist, I knew a really great one. He was one of my best friends, and he did a lot of testing. People knew that he was good at it, and he got a lot of business doing some testing. And, there's educational testing that counselors can do. And, again, I think it's a great thing because they develop these tests to try and help people because, it might take you 20 years in therapy for them to think about asking all these questions. And hopefully you don't need 20 years in therapy. But, these tests have these questions all laid out and you answer yes and no, sometimes, maybe, So I think it's a good thing. The drawbacks of these alternatives to a classification system based on overt symptoms are fundamental, making it even clearer while the empirical approach is predominant because it works. Its scientific validity has been reaffirmed throughout history in this and other areas of study, and it is today the most widely used and reliable system for categorizing the different psychopathological disorders. So again, psychologists do know what they're doing, psychiatrists, licensed counselors, licensed social workers, they do know what they're doing. I've heard people in more ignorant sections of the world, I ain't gonna say uncivilized countries, but don't believe in psychology, and they think it's all BS, that you just need to pray more, or you're not a strong person or whatever. But 9 times out of 10, that's not true. And somebody in the mental health field can help you if you feel like you're suffering from a mental illness. Knowing the historical development of our current system is an essential part of understanding why the new DSM is so important and so controversial. Remember we talked about that the other day, or the book, DSM, and it is important because it gives you a listing of mental illnesses, and it can be controversial because sometimes things come in it that some people don't like, and things go out of it that some people don't like that. So historical development of the DSM. Classification systems are not something new. They go back to the time theorists first tried to understand the workings of nature and the actions of people, both individuals and groups. And, like way back when there was still abhorrent behavior. In fact, trying to fit things we don't understand into some orderly scheme could almost be called an innate human response. It just comes naturally to the species. Of course, as our knowledge has increased, the schemes we've devised have become much more sophisticated. And that's supposed to happen to you as an individual as well. You're supposed to start out with schemas like your toddlers. Your toddlers think this works because of this. Then as you get to be an older child, you understand, this works because of this. And then a preteen and a teenager and an adult who should, keep learning and growing and understanding more. Some people, unfortunately, stop at a certain point and say, well, I'm grown, I'm done, I don't have to learn anything more. And, it's like, oh, wow. Because you should continue to learn and grow as a person. And, you're only stifling yourself and being pain to other people who, are okay with learning and growing, but then they don't know everything. So, because I admit I don't know everything. I'm smart enough to admit that. But, you're supposed to grow your critical thinking as you age and learn more and become a well-rounded person. Still, the very first attempts to distinguish the different types of abnormal behavior were quite an achievement. Because, probably before that, people were just like, I don't know. Because, people are like that now when you see somebody like, whoa, I'm going to go this way. But, early categories. Hippocrates was the first to apply an empirical approach to the problem, more than 2,000 years ago in ancient Greece. He established 3 categories: mania, melancholia, and phrenitis. So, yes, Hippocrates was your first psychologist back in good old Greece in, 2,000 plus years ago. So if you didn't know that, now you know. Basing these on behavior he had actually witnessed during the close observation of his patients. Galen, a Roman physician, went on to distinguish various forms by etiology, in that case either physical or mental. So he had a classification system. This person's problem is physical, this person's problem is mental. And you probably didn't have a good outcome for mental illness back in ancient Rome. I don't even know. I'm not even going to touch on that. These two individuals and others who followed gradually expanded the body of knowledge then in use. However, it was not until the late 19th century that a truly comprehensive system was attempted. In the intervening years, especially in the 17th century, many advances were made that profoundly affected the first system. So back in your, 1600s, during some of the Renaissance, people were starting to take another interest in this again and looking at it, a little more scientifically. In the 17th century, a number of significant discoveries concerning the body's natural functioning sparked a keener interest in the then young sciences of chemistry, anatomy, neurology, and medicine. In return, it was found that there was very often a simple organic cause behind physical illnesses, which led to more concerted and more effective efforts to cure problems. Because, they knew about the bark on the, tree, where you could, it's basically what aspirin is now. So they started figuring out, hey, there's ways to treat this stuff so that people don't have to just drop dead. Excuse me. The success of this reasoning led many people to assume that, as it was with physical illness, so it must be with mental disorders. And, that just makes sense, right? In this case, however, the pathology was assumed to be localized in the brain. They found skulls from, ancient peoples where there were holes drilled in them. They say that some South American tribes were doing brain surgery back in the day with, stone tools, and, that's a little scary in ancient China. Following Hippocrates, some medieval scholars held that all human beings were composed of 4 humors. And I'm sure a lot of us have seen this, and, if you haven't, now you know. One of which was dominant and determined a person's emotional character. The humors were A, sanguine, which was confident and cheerful. B, melancholic, dejected like the one-legged man. C, choleric, hot-tempered. And D, phlegmatic, or apathetic like the lazy fellow in bed. So, their thought processes weren't always spot on, but all these things led to more and more knowledge, and throwing out what was not good, and keeping the stuff that was good and made some sense. So that has all led to our current, science of psychology. And that's what I believe you for today. I hope that helped you figure out maybe a little bit more about why you do what you do. Please like and share this educational program, and that's what it is, an educational program. It's not designed to diagnose or treat any mental illnesses, but if something in this program triggered you, or you think it might be something that you might be suffering from, then by all means, please contact your mental health professional and get some help. Excuse me. If you want to help me out, subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you want to help me out even more, go to my Patreon page and become a patron. The link for that is in my posts, along with links for my books and some other information. Thanks for watching or listening. That's all for now. Until next time.